Daughters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV. And welcome to this UFO Disclosure 2016 Stephen Bassett interview. So it is 2016 now. In fact, we're almost halfway through the year already. I mean, Tempus Fugit or what? Blimey, I mean, it seems only yesterday it was Christmas and I was making my last video in the series UFO Disclosure 2015. And as I explained in that video, I was incorrect, and a lot of people were incorrect. 2015 was not the year of disclosure, and so far 2016 has not been. I ought to apologise actually, because this new series of films, UFO Disclosure 2016, has begun rather late. I intended to start making them earlier in the year. I haven't had time because of that book, which I'll talk about later on. So what happens now? Well, there has been some updates. A lot has happened since the last film, and so much so in fact that I don't have time to talk about them all in this video, so please stay tuned for another, the second in this series, UFO Disclosure 2016, pretty soon. But as far as the updates go, I could talk about them and provide you with a link to my latest interview with Stephen Bassett, because I did actually interview Stephen Bassett a couple of weeks ago on Hapanwo Radio. But I think it's easier if we just let that conversation sort of enlighten you on what's been happening since. So I've decided to make my Hapanwo Radio interview with Stephen Bassett available to Hapanwo TV viewers. If you wish to listen to the entire programme, it's a link in the description box as usual. But the actual interview is in its unedited entirety on this particular video. Okay, so you'll get a chance to hear the whole thing. And that basically go through everything that's been happening basically since Steve was last on the show, which is round about when I made the last video in this series. And then we'll talk about a few other things that have happened since then, which I think are relevant and very important to this issue. Because the story is far from over. I don't think the window of opportunity that 2015 provided has completely swung shut yet. And it looks as if things are getting very interesting indeed, in fact. So without further ado, I'll give you Stephen Bassett on Hapanwo Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, listen to the Hapanwo show on Hapanwo Radio. We have the return of another guest, another regular guest, all the way from Washington DC in the United States of America. We have Stephen Bassett. Hi, Steve.
Ben, it's good to be with you as always.
That's great to have you back on the show. I'm quite interested to hear what's been happening in the last few months since you were on before. So we'll start talking about that now. I think one person I think is going to be at the centre of this conversation is a lady called Hillary Clinton.
Yes, though we call her Secretary Clinton here as a matter of protocol.
I'm sorry, Hillary, if you're listening.
No. Well, I mean, outside the country, you don't have quite the need for that. But here, I have to call her Secretary Clinton.
Fair enough, mate. Well, if you're listening, Secretary Clinton, no offence meant. So, now she is, of course, the wife of a former First Lady of Bill Clinton, who was president between, I think it was 92 and 2000 or something.
Yeah.
And now she and her husband both have a history in this area of UFOs, don't they? Oh, ET, extraterrestrial.
The extraterrestrial issue, the ET issue, yes, they do.
Right, and that was the Rockefeller initiative, which we talked about.
That's right.
Yeah. So now she's Hillary, Mrs. Secretary Clinton, Hillary, whatever you want to call her. She's now one of the three leading candidates to be US president, the next US president after the election in November.
Yeah, she's really the leading candidate still to be president. And what's happening, Ben, is actually getting pretty straightforward. The Clintons have connection to the issue. They actually tried to engage it in the White House. We don't know exactly what the details are in terms of what President Clinton tried to do, especially with respect to getting materials from the Pentagon. But he did some things, but it just wasn't going to work. And I understand that lasted about 3 years.
Yeah. But
it was significant, and it should have been disclosed to the American people, because had that taken place, then the issue would have had more gravitas, and it would have helped the research, and might have actually led to eventually having this issue finally resolved. But they didn't. They actually decided they just wouldn't talk about it again. And for the next, from 1996, from the end of the Rockefeller Initiative to 2015, basically 19 years, they never spoke of it ever. And they weren't asked about it by the media. There's no reporters ever acknowledged asking them a question up until early 2015. And so the upshot is that when Secretary Clinton begins her second campaign for president, the situation had changed significantly from not only 1996, but also from the first time that she ran for president, which was in 2007. What had changed the most important change was the citizen hearing on disclosure, which PRG produced at the National Press Club, and that was in April, May of 2013. We had 42 witnesses come in. It was the largest assemblage of top researchers and important witnesses ever put together in one place. And that place was the ballroom of the National Press Club. We held a mock congressional hearing called the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure. 30 hours of testimony over 5 days, fully filmed in high def, and then webcast to the world. And that was the platform on which Paradigm Research Group launched the Congressional Hearing Political Initiative in November the 5th of 2014, approximately, 14 months later.
Yeah. That was the tweet Washington and things like that. We had that. We talked about this before. There was a Twitter storm, wasn't there? We had to
exactly.
Yeah.
We launched a Twitter storm in order to rain almost 2 million tweets down on Congress to let them know we're coming. We shipped the entire record of the citizen hearing to each member of Congress, which included 3 hours of testimony on the Rockefeller Initiative, as well as 3 hours of testimony in another very significant issue, and that is the nuclear weapons tampering in a part of these craft, meaning the craft would come down and turn off our nuclear weapons. This happened a number of times.
Yeah. And
thus the game was afoot. And as you know, and we talked about that. So for the next, since March 2014, November of 2014, which is now, we're approaching, I guess, like 18 months, maybe 19 months.
Yeah.
It's been a full court press on the Clintons. There's a two-pronged strategy. I approached and eventually began to get meetings on Capitol Hill with Senate and House staffers regarding new hearings on this issue. A focus was on the nuclear weapons tampering, which is a no-brainer for a hearing. We have many Air Force witnesses to that. And the other was, of course, the Rockefeller Initiative, which is certainly worthy of a hearing. That was the first prong of the strategy, or the first part. I really did not expect to get hearings anytime soon because they hadn't held hearings since 1968 and have resisted every effort to get hearings since then, particularly since 1992. But I wanted everyone in town to know I was up there, because they wouldn't know what I was talking about exactly, and that kind of raised the temperature. The second part was, of course, political engagement of the campaign by the Clintons on this issue. So, since we've talked last, an awful lot has happened. Can you, just to help me here a little bit, can you recall exactly when that last broadcast was?
Right. But, Steve, it was in program 152 of the Panel Show. It was Thursday, the 10th of September last year.
The 10th of September. Okay, so here's what's happened since the 10th of September. It's kind of cool, actually.
Good timing.
On September 29th, just 7 days before the very first debate in the Democratic primary that Secretary Clinton would participate in, John Podesta, her campaign chairman, put out another tweet relating to an interview she had just had with Lena Dunham. This was a millennial outreach political maneuver, and gave an interview to this nice actress, Lena Dunham of Girls, on I think it's on HBO. And Lena interviewed her for a while. It was all very well, all very nice. It was on the internet. But then he puts out this tweet Great interview, hashtag Lena Dunham. But Lena, ask her about aliens next time. Hashtag the truth is out there. CC Hillary Clinton. This is part of a string of things that the Clintons and Podesta and even Obama have been saying that are alluding to this issue. This was particularly notable because it was almost as if he was saying to the next debate moderators, I forget which it was, it might have been CNN, might have been NBC.
I think it was more than one, because you in your updates, this has happened several times, and John Podesta, who of course we'll just clarify for listeners, he's actually managing Hillary Clinton's campaign.
Not managing, he's her campaign chairman. Not
yeah.
quite the same thing, but let's say he's the top guy.
Yeah, but by CCing these things to Miss Clinton herself, he's obviously saying this obviously has her approval.
Absolutely. That's exactly why he did it. And so it's almost as if he's telling the debate moderators, okay, if you got the spunk to ask her about the ET, we're ready to answer. But they didn't. They didn't answer. Okay. So just about 7 days later exactly, her husband appears on Colbert, and he gets asked about the extraterrestrial question, and he gives an interesting response. That was October the 6th. And then the big breakthrough, which we'd been waiting for, on December the 30th, Secretary Clinton gave an interview to the Conway Daily Sun as part of her campaign in New Hampshire.
Yes.
Our primary campaigns, yes. And she did 2 hours with their editorial board, and then afterwards she was interviewed briefly by a reporter named Damon Steer. He asked her about the ET question. She gave him about a 2-minute response on the record. This was all intentional, all planned. It was the Christmas season, Christmas, New Year's holidays. People aren't paying attention as much. Kind of, I guess you could say it's called a limited hangout, trial balloon. And she said, one, that she would get to the bottom of the UFO issue if she was elected, that a task force to look into Area 51 might be appropriate. And then, very remarkably, she said something particularly notable. We may have already been visited, we just don't know. Of course, we do know, and I'm pretty sure she knows. But again, we're talking about a process of exposure, testing the waters in the middle of a major political campaign. But that story rocketed around the world.
I remember. I can't help thinking, Steve, it might have been a kind of tacit reply to your open letter that we talked about last time.
Yeah, I had sent an open letter not too prior to that, which was pretty strong letter. It was a version of earlier ones I put out, but it's all part of the overall pressure being put on her campaign. The major pressure that's going toward her and her campaign is that reporters I'm working with, and it's now up to like 14 that I'm actually in a working relationship with on these stories, have been calling their offices and calling Podesta's offices and emailing them and saying, we'd like to ask you about this and that and whatever, and they're not responding. In other words, they're not giving any answers, which is not surprising, except, of course, when you stonewall a reporter's questions, that just tells them that the issue is important.
Yes, they're not just saying, oh, go away and don't be silly. They're just saying,
yeah, it's a silly thing,
no
don't bother.
comment.
No comment, it's ridiculous. No, they're not answering at all. And so that's this New Hampshire was a major development. And then things kind of quieted down through January. And then, but I say quieted down, I mean, the media coverage is now pouring out since November of 2014. PRG has helped to create more political media coverage of the ET issue than in the previous 68 years.
Yeah.
I'm estimating 1,000 articles, counting English language and foreign press. Meaning political in a sense is talking not about sightings, is talking about Clinton and the Rockefeller Initiative and what's going on and the cover-up and all this stuff, and the truth embargo and blah, blah, blah. And that's the kind of thing, of course, that really turns up the heat on the truth embargo. On February the 11th, Obama goes on a talk show, Ellen DeGeneres, and they have a 6-year-old come on. The whole thing's scripted, and she asks him about extraterrestrials. He gives her a very clever response. That was February 11th. More articles come out, and then another major move on the part of the Clintons. Several of the high-end media, like Time Magazine, Washington Post, and stuff, New York Times, it kind of intimated that Clinton was just joking in Conway when she made those remarks. Must be just joking. Well, on March the 1st, her campaign chair, while they were campaigning in another state, this would be Nevada, he gives an interview to KLAS-TV, a big-time station there. And they're
George Knapp's old one.
Well, it's George Knapp, so he's still there.
Yeah,
I mean, multi-Emmy winning George Knapp is still there, and he actually the station did I guess you could say a short doc piece on it that he most certainly narrated, and they listed a lot of the things we've just been talking about. It was like a little primer on this. It was very powerful. I have links to all of this at paradigmresearchgroup.org. You can see the whole thing in chronological order. In that interview, basically Podesta confirmed that her remarks were not serious. We're not a joke. They were serious. That she has promised him, quote, she's going to look into it, Task Force Area 51 and so forth. So this basically completely pulled the rug out from under the top end media, like the networks, like the cable networks, like the New York Times, Times of London, that if they think they can just avoid this because it's a joke, they have miscalculated. That was March the 1st. That generated a lot of press. Then on March the 21st, finally, Secretary Clinton herself turns up on the Jimmy Kimmel show, just like Barack Obama.
Yes, I remember this.
And she's asked the ET question, and she gives an extremely interesting response in which she tries to use more what we call advanced language, and actually goes out of her way of pointing it out that she's using advanced language like unidentified aerial phenomena, not UFO. Reiterates again she's going to look into it. By now, she's virtually locked herself into going after this issue if she's elected to the White House. It's almost impossible that she would go in and say, well, maybe we'll get around to it in my second term. But there's much more going on than that. That happens on March 24th, and then on April the 8th. Now, by the way, as we arrive at April the 8th of 2016, there had been 18 what we call debates here, our standard debates.
Yeah,
and town halls, where in the debate, the candidates are all on the same stage and they're asked questions in this very orderly fashion. In the town halls, essentially, it's the candidate and a single moderator from one of the networks. And then it's not a debate, but then they're asked questions. Sometimes the questions come from the audience. There had been 18 of these, and in spite of the hundreds of articles referring to the Rockefeller Initiative, referring to the connection between the Clintons and the ET issue, not a single one of the moderators from CNN or MSNBC or Fox News or ABC or CBS had asked her a single question about it. And it looks to me like they are actually encouraging him to do so. However, it's a dual strategy because in spite of these trial balloons, if the media at the top end, it's kind of really the forefront of the campaign, like, in the UK would be what? Be the Times of London, right?
Yeah, we have a similar system over here. I mean, our electoral system is much simpler than the United States one, but the candidates get questions and they face each other, and then the audience sometimes gets to ask questions. I don't know if there's
and there's certain like the BBC is in the forefront of this. I mean, you have the high end.
They usually the BBC often hosts these events actually.
So I think their attitude was, the strategy is, if the big guys are not going to jump in because basically they're tied into the truth embargo, have been for decades, okay, fine, we'll just keep on cruising through the election, nomination through the election, and right into the White House. But they know that they can't just ignore the issue, so they're playing a dual strategy. So and here's where it gets really fascinating. It's April the 8th. We're just like 10 days away from the big New York primary, very important primary election. And we're 6 days away from the final debate, likely the final debate on CNN. And so what does John Podesta do? He actually gives an interview to one of the CNN people, Jake Tapper, who in fact had been a moderator in one of the previous debates. And in the interview, he reiterates again that she's going to look into it, that it's a serious issue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then 6 days later, the debate takes place, and the CNN moderators don't ask her about it. And by the way, the day before the debate, she goes on a very popular radio network in New York itself called Power 105.1 FM. And she's asked about extraterrestrials, and she gives, again, responses that she's going to look into it. And that's where we are circa April 19th. So that's all just happened
It's quite remarkable, Steve.
since the last show. And then, of course, the media coverage has continued unabated. Now, the UK press, that's another very notable thing. It took a while. I mean, a whole lot of media coverage, really. But the UK press finally jumped in on January the 5th. Now, when I say UK press, I'm talking about the news tabloids, which are extremely popular in the UK, very popular in the United States too, by the way.
We have international media now, don't we? So we all read each other's newspapers.
Get websites, yeah, on the web, of course. It's not like they're shipping the paper overseas.
No.
And so the UK news tabloids, which again, that's not the same as the National Enquirer. I think most people know that. The equivalent to that we have here is like the New York Post, the New York Daily News. Plenty of news, plenty of hard stuff, also a lot of entertainment stuff, some celebrity stuff, and it's read by everybody: rich, poor, famous and unfamous, and politicians. And so the UK press finally jumped in on January the 5th. And now they've been covering the UFO ET stuff forever, but this is when they jumped in on the it was January the 5th on the politics of this, and off they went. Jonathan Dillon, Daily Mirror, Hillary Clinton. This is January the 3rd. I will reveal the truth about Area 51 and UFOs if I become president.
She said task force. She said she used the word task force or something, didn't she?
Task force together, yeah. Kelly McLaughlin, Daily Mirror. Hillary Clinton, I will reveal the truth about UFOs. Robert Waugh in the Metro. Hillary Clinton, I will reveal the truth. Then John Austin, the Daily Express. Aliens may have visited, shocked Hillary Clinton claim as she vows to open the UFO cover-up. And then we've got, move on a little bit up the ways, and the next thing kind of turns up is, hang on, I'm going to get there. I mean, there's so much here. I mean, again, if you go to paradigmresearchgroup.org and you click on the political coverage link at the bottom of that page, you can go right to it.
There's a lot there.
Let's see. Well, it's a little bit of a break, and then boom, up it comes. We got, let's see, why is it taking so long? There's so much here.
Sorry, while you're waiting, Steve, I just mentioned that Gary Heseltine, our mutual friend, editor of UFO Truth magazine, he actually commented on the Mirror, and they actually published his comment at the bottom of the article.
He's been several of these articles.
Yeah, and he was saying that Hillary Clinton can't run away from this. So they moved his comment from the comments box into the actual article, which is really quite unprecedented. And then they had a poll on that. This is the Daily Mirror we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. They had a poll. You could actually select what you thought as the answers for all the readers. And the question was, is there a UFO cover-up? And 500 people, plus, voted. And the figures were quite encouraging. 83% yes, 17% no.
That is about the standard. Even when they do the sophisticated, polls, right? Not just something up on the web, but sophisticated polls. That's about the number they get. 83 to 88%, roughly, believe that the government's not telling the truth. And so on it goes. March 3, Scott Bixby, The Guardian. Clinton would consider declassifying government documents relating to UFOs. March 3, Jasper Hamill, Daily Mirror. Hillary Clinton aide vows to release top secret UFO files, which could prove the existence of articles. And by the way, as all your listeners know, when you're talking about these website articles, I mean, some of them are in the print too, but the ones on the web have got the links to the videos, to the tweets, to the documents. Yeah. It's much more powerful than the print articles, which really don't have that. John Austin, Daily Express. Clinton again vows to find out what White House knows about UFOs. James Wilkinson, Daily Mail. Hillary Clinton promised to get to the bottom of the UFO mystery. The UK press is in it with both feet, and they are pounding away. All right. So with that, that is starts in January the 3rd of this year, and that has continued on, and you can see all of this coverage at paradigmresearchgroup.org. So what is now where we are now is that I am now working directly with 14 journalists on a regular basis. As a news source, okay? You know what I'm saying?
So
as a
yeah,
news.
so it's like they are actually publishing a regular column on this. You mean?
Could you pause for just a second?
Yeah, sure, no problem. And this is really good, Steve. So you're working with these 14 journalists. I mean, are they? So is this kind of like a regular column on the issue of
No,
disclosure?
no, 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 no. I'm a news source, okay?
Hmm.
And if you got a big enough story, what happens is you develop relationship with reporters, and you provide them information, and they come back to you. I mean, that's big stories. They're not something you just write an article, walk away. Now, not all reporters do this, but this story is big enough that I'm now working with 14. I'm not writing their stuff. I'm just providing them information on a very timely basis. I'm trying to make sure they get it as quickly as possible. Um, and these are 14 print operations. They're all relatively high end, mainstream. So, and they've already written between them maybe 30, 35 articles on just the political situation here on this issue. I may add 4 or 5 more in the next couple of weeks. And here's why. Well, first of all, some news. I just got back from New York. Again, for people to sort of get an idea. I think before I go further, let me be clear. And as I've said before, I said it in September. Let me emphasize it. We are closing in on the end of the truth embargo, and I believe it's going to be forced out. But not by Secretary Clinton, but by actually President Obama. But it is the Secretary Clinton's connection to the issue and her husband's connection, and the fact that, of course, she's running to be president, that has created the ability to bring the media into this with force. And it's only going to get more intense. And so we're close to the truth embargo coming to an end, and an announcement finally coming from the
So.
fine governments to which we owe our allegiance that, yeah, we're not alone in the universe, and they're already here, and we'll more later. Okay, so that's what's going on here.
I mean, I respect your confidence, Steve, and I hope you're right. But we have had conversations when you've said this before, and this over the last couple of years, and we're still waiting. I mean,
yeah, but not discussions where but these discussions were prior to Bill Clinton in Hong Kong, Bill Clinton on Jimmy Kimmel, tweets by John Podesta, Obama on Jimmy Kimmel, Clinton on Colbert, comments from a running presidential candidate. We're in a whole new place.
And so you think it's actually we don't even have to wait for Hillary to get into the White House? And
I have no intention to see that go that far. I mean, this is going to happen now. And the very latest is this. I went to New York 4 days ago. I was up there for 4 days. I met with a top editor of one of the major New York papers, provided them a full set of the actual Rockefeller Initiative documents, the paper set, to go along with the 150 documents that they're able to access online at PRG's site. And then the next day, I was called and then went down and interviewed with the New York Times. Now, that article is due to come out tomorrow. Well, it's come out Thursday, rather, the 28th, but it might not come out till Friday, the 29th. Do I know? I know it's going to be about the political issue and the Clintons. Do I know if it's going to be a strong piece or a weak piece? Do I know how I'm going to be treated in that article? I don't. I do feel like it's going to be a legitimate article, and I think it's going to be serious, and they're not going to mess too much with the issue. But understand, the major papers like the Wall Street Journal, New York
they
Times,
call them I think the word is papers of record. You call them in America.
Yes, papers of record.
These are sort of
the Wall Street Journal is America's financial paper of record. You've got one, right?
Yeah, the Times, Independent.
Yeah, and then the Washington Post is the political paper of record. These papers at the top end have the worst track record on dealing with this issue. They act almost as if there's nothing there at all. And I think I know the reasons for this, but that said, that doesn't mean that they will indefinitely stand off to the side while hundreds of other print venues are driving this story. They're not crazy, and they like Pulitzer Prizes like everybody else. So I am optimistic this article will be good. and your listeners won't have to wait very long to see it. But please understand.
If it comes out Thursday the 28th, it's there now because this is when this interview is being broadcast. So check it out, ladies and gentlemen, if it's there.
Yeah, we're talking the day before. Let me just say this, and I told the writer this. If the New York Times does a serious piece, because I provided them with a great deal of information, links to coverage, and of course links to the key documents in the Rockefeller Initiative. They have everything they need to do a very serious piece that challenges this issue in regards to Secretary Clinton's efforts to achieve the presidency. If they write a serious piece on this, it is going to rocket around the world. It's going to be republished everywhere. It's going to greenlight an awful lot of journalists. It's going to have very significant impact. Okay?
Yeah.
And so that was yesterday. And now what happens next is that on Sunday night, I believe, let me check, it's been changed here. Hang on a second. Sunday night, which is May 1st, I am leaving for London. And I'm going to be in London for the entire month of May. And I'm going to be meeting with the London-based reporters that I have been working with to try to get this story to the British people. And there's a very good chance I'm going to be meeting with some editors of some of these papers. And I will have a set of the paper, the 800-page set of documents obtained under Freedom of Information Act, which of course confirms the Rockefeller Initiative and the Clinton ET connection with me, and I will be happy to provide them to any of those papers. So again, I think, Ben, you gotta see that this is now at a level way beyond anything it has ever been before. This isn't about proving there's ETs here. This is about the connection of this issue to a major presidential election in the United States. And at some point, the lead candidate, Secretary Clinton, is going to be asked very serious questions by journalists that simply cannot be given a casual response. And I believe that her campaign is quite ready to give it a serious response. And when that happens, Ben, we're practically home free. We're probably looking at disclosure in a very short amount of time.
Well, so I mean, you're right. That is an unprecedented situation. There's no doubt about it, because the news coverage we are getting at the moment is pretty spectacular in terms of it's the level it's up to. So I mean, I myself have not seen anything like this before. So
well, I mean, the British people should be practically on fire about this. I mean, let me just give you some of the more recent articles. April, hang on a second. What happened there? I need to add that. Let's see. April 22nd, John Austin, Sunday Express. Hillary Clinton tells alien abductee. This was, one of the guys on that radio show, 105, Power 105 in New York, told her. This is the first time this has ever happened. He's one of three disc, one of the, he's like the radio guys. And he says, he thinks he's been abducted a couple of times. He was quite serious. And she obviously that is a much more difficult question to ask a political candidate. And he didn't ask a question and she kind of moved around it, but there it was. So here's the headline, John Austin, Sunday Express. Hillary Clinton tells alien abductee national security could block UFO truth bid. All right.
Yeah,
okay. And then on how about this one? April 12th, John Austin, Daily Express. Former White House chiefs strong signal U.S. government is covering up proof of aliens. I mean, Daily Mirror, was this March 29? What will be revealed if Hillary Clinton lifts the lid on the UFO Air Force notorious Area 51? That's Tom Parry. Daily Mirror, March 28. Hillary Clinton confirms she will release secret UFO files if she's elected.
Yeah, I mean, there is a different tone to these articles, Steve, than what I've seen before. Because I mean, the media has always covered UFOs, but now it's they used to be very much in the novelty side of things, and now It does look
Hmm.
like there was a serious tone to these. I mean, well, a British politician actually came out recently and announced that he was an abductee, Simon Parks.
That
Who's,
is correct.
so that's, of course, they made a joke of it, but some in some areas. But
Now they won't be joking long.
no, I mean, some are like Jimmy Fallon. I mean, you mentioned this guy Jimmy Fallon, who's making the
He
joke.
made a joke.
Yeah.
Made a joke. Yeah, and I think he was more irritated because President Obama, Secretary Clinton, President Clinton, they were all coming on Jimmy Kimmel's show. They weren't coming on his show, so he made a joke. Maybe when they start coming on his show, he'll be a little more serious. So I think, look, uh, we are closing in on finally getting this completely engaged by the media, and once that begins, there can only lead to one place, and that is the Pentagon and the U.S. president are going to have to get together and reach an understanding so Barack Obama can go in front of the American people and finally end this truth embargo. Hopefully before Vladimir Putin does it, because he is
Yes.
definitely someone who could do it, and I'm surprised he hasn't already.
Yeah, and he's a bit of a wild card, that guy. I mean, he doesn't answer to anyone except himself. That's the way I look at things.
Yeah, and
But
he doesn't have any problem getting any information from his own military, does he?
yeah, and there's his deputy Medvedev, Dmitry Medvedev, has already
Right.
made. He was secretly recorded talking about this.
Well, he wasn't secretly recorded. He had uh, he had given a presentation, and a reporter approaches him afterwards, and supposedly he didn't realize the mic was on. I don't believe this for a second. And she asked him about whether very secret stuff is passed from one, president and prime minister to another, and he gets into it, and he gets into the ET issue, and he refers to a movie called, or to a film called Men in Black, which
Mm.
in fact was not the Men in Black from the U.S., which is a comedy, but in fact a documentary, serious documentary. This, I believe, was an actual message to the United States by Putin Medvedev that we know about this too,
Mm.
and I think that Russia, for its own reasons, has continued to defer to the United States, meaning, okay, somebody needs to start this ball rolling. We're prepared to let you be that country, but their patience is not infinite, and so it could happen. That would be a significant thing. So the U.S. is running out of time. They need to get this done,
I hope so,
and
because I mean, there's certainly been a bit of a fallout, a cooling of relations with Anglo-Russian relations, United States-Russian
yeah,
relations. There's planes, the ships in the Baltic Sea and the Russian planes shooting past them
sure.
and things like that.
Well, you've got Russia and the U.S. doing brinksmanship in the Black Sea. You've got the U.S. and China doing brinksmanship in the South China Sea. You've got the entire Middle East in flames, and you've got a massive refugee crisis in Europe that threatens to bring the entire EU down. I mean, the policies of nations, particularly the big ones, and I'm going to include the UK here,
Hmm.
have created a massive mess and that's leading apparently to more wars, which I think virtually 98% of the world's people have finally figured out is nothing more than a rigged game played out by narcissistic personality disorders, psychopaths, and warmongers for whatever problems they're trying to compensate in their childhood. And they don't really want to do this, but they haven't figured out how to stop it. And so things are coming to a head here. Now, let me also mention, Ben, that while I will be in London for a month, I will be trying to meet with editors of the papers. I am open to meeting with people there if a group would like to have me chat with them. I'm not looking to try to set up some big gathering. I want to do that. I'm also opening to meet with people that would like to maybe seriously support this issue because we still haven't completed the job and more funding is needed. I've gone through an awful lot of money, and right now I'm needing additional funds in order to make sure that PRG can keep this pressure on at the level that it needs to see. We need to see through certainly the election, and if necessary, through the inauguration, if it's Secretary Clinton. So let it be known that I'm open to that. I'm easily to reach at PRG at paradigmresearchgroup.org. though if you just Google my name, Stephen Bassett with a PH, I think all that stuff comes up.
There'll be links in the description box, listeners, in the show notes. Sorry, to all
And of
these
course,
websites. Yeah.
And then it's worth noting that the key stuff is this is one page that is kind of the central page to all of this. And if you go to paradigmresearchgroup.org, which has been the lead top page to everything PRG is doing, at the bottom of that very top page, it says find extensive political media coverage here. That link takes you to the whole picture with links and graphics and tweets, and key stuff is emphasized with nice graphics, and then you've got a list of the vast amount of coverage. Anybody, I don't care whether they're a reporter or an editor or a producer or a BBC producer, were to go through that coverage, who doesn't realize that a major story is about to break, I don't know what the hell they're doing in journalism at all. So I'm looking forward to meeting with some people in London, and I'm not really in a position to go traveling around the UK. This is not another European tour, which I've done a number of.
Yeah, that's right.
This is an effort to bring the UK media into this even further, because and there's a reason for this. Not only because, of course, they have a lot more influence over here than you might think, except for the Times in London, which is absolutely nothing about this. As far as the Times in London is concerned, there are no, quote, craft in the sky. The whole thing is somehow some sort of embarrassing foo-fa that the public is hoaxing on the world or whatever. And it's going to embarrass them one day. The Times of London is going to be seriously embarrassed as their top people are asked, exactly how did one of the great papers of the world blow a story for 65 years? And I think most of them are going to shrug and go, I don't know, right? And it's going to diminish the Times. They still have time to get into this,
but
if they would open their eyes and stop being so elitist.
Yeah, I mean, embarrassed is just an understatement. I mean, it's. I mean, we've, of course, for a lot of people, it'll be an understatement. But so that's really quite amazing. It's a shame you're not over here a couple of days earlier, Steve, because there's actually a UFO conference in Watford where I'm speaking, but that's on the 30th of April. It's actually on this Saturday, so you'll just miss that, which is a shame. But no doubt, it's going to be about the exopolitics issue. So that'll
sure it'll come up and have a good time in that. Yeah, it may be. There will be plenty more conferences, I can assure you.
I bet there will be. Now, of course, I've got to ask about the other candidates, because it looks. I agree with you. I think Hillary Clinton is by far the most likely candidate to win. However, there is, of course, Bernie Sanders, her own rival, which she's facing in the primaries, and the GOP, the other party, have the blonde-haired, loud-voiced of Donald Trump. Have they said anything about this issue?
No.
They've not said a word.
All 23 of the Republican candidates, at one point or another were in this primary debate, as well as the other two Democratic candidates, Martin O'Malley and Governor O'Malley and Senator Bernie Sanders, have absolutely nothing to say about this issue, have never had anything to say about this issue, and are simply not in play at all, which raises a very interesting situation, which I invite your more political savvy listeners to mull over while they're having a bit of tea, maybe later in the afternoon. Secretary Clinton has a huge amount of baggage, which anyone would have who have been in the public domain for as long as she has. She has a very high disapproval rating, one of the highest ever for a candidate seriously in the running for president. The only person with a higher disapproval rating is, of course, Donald Trump. So we have a very strange situation. But in any event, she has a couple of investigations going on within the U.S. government, particularly the FBI, regarding actions that she took as Secretary of State, including Benghazi. And then there's a very complicated situation, which is also being investigated, regarding the huge Clinton Foundation, which raised huge sums of money. She has not got a guaranteed path to the presidency yet. She is certainly on a path to win the most delegates, which gets her nominated. And we have a different process over here. It costs 100 times or 1,000 times more than yours, and it lasts 10 times as long.
That's right, yeah.
And I would switch to the parliamentarian system in a second if I was asked, But the way system we have, which has had its good days and its bad days, is now kind of dysfunctional and it's a failed political system, guaranteed to have bad outcomes, and we haven't been able to change it, but then we haven't been able to change much of anything over here, if you hadn't noticed. So here's the deal, though. So she could have anything at any time. Something could come out that could almost derail her candidacy, even her nomination. However, if the esteemed, multimillionaire, and virtually every one of them, moderators that work for the 3 network news operations in the U.S., ABC, NBC, CBS, and the 3 major cable news operations, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, and all of these moderators make in between $1 million and $20 million a year. Okay, right?
Well,
meanwhile, the guys out doing the hard stuff, like the war correspondents of dodging bullets, I'd be lucky if they're making $100,000. If they finally bring this question to her, which they are more than ready to respond, and the media then launches into this thing with the kind of ferocity and depth that it has, of course, been waiting 60 years to receive, I believe the issue will blow out, leading to disclosure. And if that happens, then that would be by President Obama. Guess what? The only candidate running for president that has any connection to the issue, including efforts to try to deal with it during her husband's administration, comments by her campaign chairman on numerous occasions, comment by one of her very close associates, former Governor Bill Richardson, and is Secretary Clinton. Everybody else, it's almost like they were locked in a vault somewhere. They have nothing to say. They have no connection. It's sort of like, oh, really? There's extraterrestrials. And so instantly, Secretary Clinton is elevated. Really, immediately they're on the 3rd floor, and she's instantly up almost in the penthouse suite. And nobody's going to really care much anymore what these other candidates think about anything. In fact, it could actually guarantee her the presidency. This is part of the political calculation underway. It's an unprecedented calculation that no presidential candidates ever had to think about. But here it is. So that, again, is a picture of what's going on. And one of the reasons why the Clintons are willing, I think, to risk engaging this issue, knowing that, of course, it's been under a 69-year embargo by their own government and has been ridiculed and undermined for decades. Knowing that anyway, they are saying and doing what they're saying.
Right. So in other words, Steve, this issue could become like a bargaining chip in terms of one's career in politics, because Hillary Clinton now, obviously, she's got a bit of trouble doing some dodgy dealing, but then of course I think they all do at some point. But,
yeah, but not ones with the level of profile that she has.
Yeah, but so do you think this could save her? This could actually save her.
I think that it is not an unreasonable consideration if you are a strategist to believe that this might in fact be the solution to her potential serious problems.
Yeah, I mean, we all know about wise career moves. And I mean, I must say, I mean, I have been as surprised as you are by the change in tone in terms of the media coverage of the ET subject. if it could ever become a wise career move to talk about UFOs is amazing, because I mean one of the articles you sent me was I can't remember which one it was now, but one of the articles you sent on your newsletters was about some. It talked about the UFO vote. Now we hear phrases like the grey vote, referring to older voters. There's the black vote and the Mexican vote, etc., etc. But now we have the UFO vote. Does that
Well,
refer?
again, let me stop you now. Look, Ben,
All right.
you've been at this a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you paid your dues.
Yeah.
You're close to the end. We need to get our language together here, because we're moving into a different place, and we need to leave the old language behind and go with the new language. It's not about UFOs.
I know. That's a quote from the article that you actually posted, Steve. That's all I mean. I know you don't like that term.
Okay, I'm sorry. And by the way, when I post these articles, I have to list the headlines.
Yeah,
and of course, the headlines use UFO, right? But let me make it clear: it's not what it's about. They just don't know how to phrase it yet. Most of them, it's about extraterrestrial craft. All right, it's not UFOs, but extraterrestrial craft. And it's not a cover-up. It's not a cover-up. It is, in fact, a truth embargo, just like the United States embargoed Cuba. They embargoed the ET issue. It's like they embargoed the galaxy, actually. And they said, we know it's there, we know what's going on, but you can't go there. Okay. The overarching term, I think, that best describes or serves to group together the political, social history of all this and implications of this is a term called exopolitics, which is still around, and I think will come back to life big time very soon. Right? Don't like to use the word aliens. It's kind of like, I know it's been around for a long time in this issue, but it is in fact not the right term. The right term is extraterrestrials. That has a lot of syllables and a lot of letters, and I can appreciate. And it's very hard to spell. I misspell it all the time. But that's what they are, right? But we do have the shorthand ET.
Yeah,
more and more people get.
I spelled extraterrestrial with a hyphen, by the way. There's no house style, I think, but
I think it's British. You tend to use the hyphen over here. It's kind of one word. Both work, but I prefer the single word.
Fair enough. Yeah,
I sort of go that way, and there's other things. I mean, the term believer, for instance.
I don't like that one.
Yeah, nobody likes that, and it's time for that to go. And I pointed out. Yeah, I pointed out it's literally a pejorative. You're absolutely right. It's become an epithet, which is very good. And there are people that get that, and that's good.
Yeah, because I mean, there are people who believe the official story which the truth embargo has put out. I mean, they're believers in that it's all weather balloons and swamp gas.
But yeah, to be fair to them, they assume that the government, with all its resources, has researched the thing, and if they say there's no phenomena here, then they are convinced by that government statement. But the government statement on ETs is not like you say, the leap of faith that you take, say, in religions when you believe that there is a God or what have you. They are convinced by the government statements. Turns out the government statements are false, so they're wrong. But these are no longer trivial terms anymore, and I'm doing my best there, but I am limited. We're all limited in the sense that we still have to engage with the infrastructures, the media, politicians, and so forth, who don't understand this new language, who haven't embraced it yet. So the term UFO ain't going away anytime soon, except after disclosure. After disclosure, if people are talking about UFOs, they really need to take, a moment and get it together.
But I mean, the term, quote, UFO vote, unquote, which is in the headline of the paper, which they're referring to. I was wondering if it could actually, what I meant was, the point I was making, was that it might actually refer to a block of the electorate who may be people like me with an interest in the extraterrestrial world and the truth embargo and all these other issues, whichever word you choose to call them, and that politicians might have to actually take that into account in their campaigning generally.
Not quite. I understand exactly why the political media have brought it up. It has a certain logic to it. And they've said that, right? Somewhat again in a ridiculing fashion that she's so desperate she's going after the UFO vote. No, that's not what she's doing. Um, by and large, if it wasn't for her, any candidate, for instance, that didn't have this historical connection, meaning didn't have the ability for this to be a very positive thing for them down the line, who were, quote, going to go after the UFO vote by talking about it, for every UFO vote they would get, they'd lose 3 votes somewhere else. So no, you don't go after the UFO vote. The reason that she is saying anything, the reason that John Podesta is saying anything, is not because they somehow think that they're going to get a bunch of votes that's going to win for them, but for other reasons. One, because they're being forced to, because the advocacy movement has been working this and pressing them on it, going all the way back to the early 1990s, and really heavy since 2001, when Grant Cameron's documents first went up on the internet and were accessible to anybody in the world. So they're under a lot of pressure, because if it wasn't for that, I assure you, they wouldn't be saying anything. I also believe that there is my opinion only, that they decided some time ago that if there's going to be a disclosure president, it's going to be Hillary Clinton. However, I think they've also concluded that if it's not going to be Hillary Clinton, Secretary Clinton, the next best would be President Obama. So there's that, right? But they would rather get to that without having to put this issue out. PRG has worked extremely hard to limit their options. I mean, that's what advocates do. Activists, their fundamental role is to limit the options of government regarding some policy until there's only one option left, and that's to do the right thing. I mean, that's just the way it works. That's what Gandhi, that's what the independence movement did in India. Since I'm talking to a British crowd, they eventually left the British with only one option left, and that was to leave.
Absolutely.
Which they did.
That's a good analogy, even though you're actually now addressing people from all over the world, because I do have listeners in other countries. But I'm sure they'll be able to think of their own equivalents.
Yes, I got to forget. I'm talking the internet, and we're no longer is anybody on radio or television just a British, commentator. Whenever you're talking to the world from wherever you are, and that is one of the most significant truths with huge implications of our own time.
So that's true, and as we said in previous show, I mean, you believe that Barack Obama, if he does make this decision and he is the disclosure president rather than his successor, probably Hillary Clinton, then he will be the one who will go down in history as the man who ended the truth embargo.
He goes down in history, a huge legacy, massive legacy, but. And again, that's why this calculus is working in our favor. The Democratic Party is the disclosure party, okay? And last I checked, Secretary Clinton is a Democrat. And so she benefits from that. But more importantly, the connection of her and her husband to the issue, going back so far, even though they went silent for 23 years for their own personal reasons, then coupled with the fact that starting basically April the 2nd, 2014, they started speaking up. They started throwing out some comments. Many of these comments were actually not true. They were manipulated. They were, I don't know how to put it, they were sort of true because they couldn't just be straight out truth, in which case the whole thing would have blown up right away. But whatever, it's not they're dancing around the issue, but they're actually putting it out there. All of that will result in the Clintons receiving a very significant piece of that legacy. They will be viewed as very important to the ultimate outcome. And then
Oh yeah, because we were talking about, just to mention, we mentioned in the previous show about the things that Bill Clinton had said on Jimmy Kimmel's show as well.
Exactly. No, all of
So
that,
he,
going
he
all the way
wants to
back.
jump on that bandwagon.
Yeah. Bill Clinton's first, he said a few things while he was in office, but his first real statement outside of office was 2005 in Hong Kong. And we've got a link of that up on the site. You go to the page, remember, paradigmresearchgroup.org, and click on the political coverage link at the bottom of that page. You can see it. So here's where it also gets interesting. Let's assume that disclosure finally comes in July. That the media have done their thing, and the Pentagon and the White House realize it's all over. They get together, cut a deal, and he announces in July. Well, he's only got basically August, September, October, November, December, and part of January. So he's got a little less than 6 months left. He will definitely play an important role in calming the waters, setting things up, hopefully in a way that the people are satisfied with the beginning process of small d disclosure in the post-disclosure world. But it is the next president who will do the most to shape the United States' role in the post-disclosure world, and that will be no small political legacy either.
That's true. I mean, I've read Richard Dolan and Bryce Zabel's book about that, AD after disclosure, and he gives it's a book I recommend very much, actually, but because it gives you a taste of what it might give listeners if you pick that up, it might give you a taste of what we're talking about here.
Everything that Richard Dolan has ever written is a must-read, and everyone should read everything he's ever written, right? Let's make that clear right now. So obviously, if Secretary Clinton becomes the president, what everyone thinks about her, believe me, there are huge numbers of people hate her, despise her, whatever. I'm not. PRG is not in the business of electing Secretary Clinton. That is not why we're doing what we're doing. I'm not in the business of electing anybody. I'm in the business of getting the truth embargo over. Period. But I'm just trying to realistically assess the likely outcomes here, and it's likely that she would win the presidency, and so now she's the first woman president, and she's the first full-time post-disclosure president, and just like Vladimir Putin will undoubtedly be the first pretty lengthy post-disclosure president of Russia and so forth. And there'll be all these leaders around the world that will be in unless their term is coming right to an end and they're gone, are going to play that they're going to be the key players in how the world's governments are going to deal with the post-disclosure world. And of course, the huge question that remains to be answered is how well are they going to acquit themselves? Are they going to make asses of themselves? Are they going to try to instill the same old policies? Are they going to turn their back on the people? What are they going to do? We hope that they'll rise to the occasion. Some will, some won't. But it's very important that the leader of the United States, China, and Russia rise to the occasion. So you can see that this is no longer. There's huge potential benefits to the United States, to the world's people, to the Democratic Party, to Barack Obama, to Secretary Clinton. There's huge benefits here if they're willing to understand that you're not going to get those without showing some real grit, right?
Yeah.
So we're close in that regard. We're very, very close, and so all I can say is strap your seatbelt on, because things are about to get pretty interesting.
Yeah, I guess Hillary's got your vote then, Steve.
I ain't telling you who I'm voting for.
Fair enough.
Right.
I knew you'd say that. I know you're not in the business of
But again, from the standpoint of the advocacy movement, look, if Secretary Clinton were not to win the nomination, and we haven't gotten disclosure by the convention, that is going to be a major blow to the advocacy movement, because it can be very hard to maneuver, because I don't see anybody else willing to stand up and be counted on this to their I think detriment.
Yeah, I think
to their
that's
legacy.
that's quite unlikely at this point, though, by the look of things. But no one knows because I mean, of course, in Britain, I mean, for British listeners, we've got a much simpler electoral system. We have like the parties battle it out in a single stage election, and the party at the head of government is actually the leader of the parliamentary party who's got the majority. So it's much more simple. But this is, yeah, you're right, Steve. I mean, I'm looking. I mean, I'm interested to see what happens. No, this world is never boring. I must say, whatever else it might be, it's never boring, and it's looking really interesting at the moment. And I agree with you. I can't wait to see what happens.
And now on another matter, and the timing could be very interesting here. As you know, for some time now, the British government has been dancing around the release of some additional files, which, as far as I know, have not been released yet. They have promised to do it. They haven't done it. And there's speculation these files could be rather compelling. So last I heard, it might be another month or so. So I'm expecting these files will be released, and very intrigued as to the timing.
Yeah.
If I'm the UK government, I would release them at a time when they would have the maximum impact on the issue in the presidential election here. And I think the reason that they're holding off, because I mean, well, I mean, there can't be too many reasons why they're holding off. I mean, if there's really nothing in there, then do it, for crying out loud. What the hell are they waiting for? Right?
Yeah.
But if there is something in it, then they might be just reluctant because they know it's going to create some foo-fa, or they might be holding off because they want to see how things are going with the campaign here. And what they're seeing, of course, is the UK press is jumping in with both feet, and the issue is all over the place. And so I think the timing is getting pretty right for them to go ahead and release those files and see what we got.
So could this be a marker, a clue of what's to come if these files hit the media?
If the UK were to finally release those files, many of which some people believe are connected to the Rendlesham case, if they were to do that right about now or in the very near future, given how long they've had them and could have released them sooner, I would think that they're almost sending a message. See, the UK, even more so than probably any other country, is so tied to the U.S. in so many ways, and probably tied to the U.S. at the intelligence level in ways we don't even know.
Yeah.
That they the U.S. I mean, very rarely does the United States president or the UK president, prime minister rather, get into each other's politics, and call them to do that. Recently, Barack Obama got involved in the EU thing, and how
he did.
that
Yeah, he did.
Sure, they got their back up pretty quickly. So they, and more importantly, the history of this relationship is pretty much the United States deciding what it wants to do, and the UK going along with it, not the other way around.
Yeah.
The UK comes up with a very strong policy they want to pursue, and then they have to convince the United States, and the United States goes along with it. It's the other way around. We have led, they have followed, and some hate that and some don't. But the point is that I don't see the UK trying to preempt the U.S. on this. I don't see Cameron making a disclosure announcement. But that doesn't mean that the UK would not like to see disclosure.
That's maybe possible. I mean, about Cameron. I'm thinking about Cameron is now. Cameron was actually challenged on the UFO issue by a guy, Richard D. Hall, a man we both know, and I think you know what I'm talking about at the time.
Challenged in what way?
David Cameron was on an electoral campaign just before he became Prime Minister, and he was doing a tour of the northeast of England. And Richard, if you met Richard at Exopolitics, and he does the Rich Planet TV show.
I think I have.
You know the guy, yeah, I'm sure you know him, yeah. He stood up and said, Mr. Cameron, when you become Prime Minister, which I'm sure you will you seek to lift the truth embargo, or words to that effect, about UFOs, and let the public know what's really going on? And Cameron made a big joke about it. He just laughed it off. But that was a few years. That was a few years ago, to be fair.
Okay, a lot has
And
happened since
he did
then.
apologize. He actually wrote a letter apologizing to Richard.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Richard's. It's on. You can find the details on
And
richplanet.net.
Richard published that letter. Okay.
Hmm.
Because again, in that kind of a setting, and given the truth embargo, that's the natural immediate response. You can't be stirring the pot here. But I assure you that Prime Minister Cameron knows there's an ET presence because MI6 would tell him,
Hmm.
right? I mean, it's not that hard. I don't think that your intelligence agencies or the British military has pulled this issue out from under the prime ministership like our Defense Department has pulled it out from the government. So I think they know. But again, their thinking is the U.S. should lead here. But that doesn't mean that they would like to see this disclosure thing done. And so if I've got documents that could definitely stir the pot, which the longer they've held them, the more likely I'm inclined to think they will, and I want to send a message to the United States, then I'm going to wait until their release is going to have the greatest impact.
I guess, yeah.
And that is
Makes sense.
just about now. It wouldn't surprise me if the New York Times article, if it's a good one, doesn't trigger the release of those files, meaning that Times article comes out tomorrow or Friday, and I don't know, a week later or 10 days later, boom, the documents turn up. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Right, well, that's something I think I'll ask listeners to keep an eye on. I certainly will be in the next couple of days and weeks. I mean, this could be a historical moment, as they say. And there's one more thing I want to bring up with you, Steve. You've talked about a film. It's quite an old film now. It came out a few years ago, but you've recommended it as particularly good, and it's entitled Fast Walkers.
Yeah, Fast Walkers is a good film. The Day After Disclosure is a good film. Also, of course, Out of the Blue and the upgrade to Out of the Blue. Leslie Kane's documentary. Oh Lord, I wish I had.
Generals and Pilots Go on the Record. And that's the title of her book. What's the title? If it's a film,
I
the
think
same.
that is it. The secret. But I'm actually going to get that exact one for you. But and then there is a new documentary that just came out, which you can easily locate. It's on Vimeo, and researcher Robert Hastings has finally gotten his documentary out on the nuclear weapons tampering.
Oh yes,
And I put it in. Yeah.
That's got to be.
So
I've been waiting for that. Great.
absolutely, which of course goes along with this book, which was published a while back, and this is one of the most important areas. And so I think, let me see if I can get the exact name of this documentary.
I can't remember the name of it, but
I think I've got it here. In fact, I know I've got it here. Hang on a second. I'm going to get this right. And people can easily find it. I really encourage them to watch it. It'll cost them a few shekels, but he's put in just untold amount of effort here. I mean, he deserves to, support the work.
Yeah, definitely. Please do.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll only be a few quid. Vimeo never charge more than about £3 or £4, and it'll be worth it.
Really, I mean, some pirated version will probably turn up, but all right. So that documentary is out. I know what I saw. Another documentary about. So there's quite a few, but the Hastings documentary just came out. Is really important. I can't overemphasize that. It's called UFOs and Nukes. That's the book. UFOs and Nukes: Extraordinary Encounters at Nuclear Weapon Sites is the book, which you need to read. Hard to get. The documentary is called UFOs and Nukes: The Secret Link Revisited on Vimeo. Okay, that's just out and very important. And then I think I'll try to get the exact name of Leslie Kane's documentary, which is also a good one. By the way, John Podesta is in that documentary.
Oh, right, because
again, talking the usual stuff. And then he also wrote the foreword to her book, UFOs and Generals Go on the Record. Again, when he calls for the files to be released. So what has happened is that the Clinton people have laid a pretty good, I mean, even though they have remained absolutely silent on the Rockefeller Initiative, because they know if they went there, it would probably trigger the whole thing, and they weren't ready for that. Well, because it could have triggered it under a Republican president like George Bush, right? But they have still laid a pretty substantial track here of addressing the issue, so they do not look like they have been stonewalling it or over hiding it or whatever, right? It looks like they have at least made some effort to try to bring it forward. Ultimately, they'll throw the Pentagon under the bus and say, well, they wouldn't provide information, which is constitutionally unacceptable. And the people will be, I think, pretty understanding. Keen's documentary is called Secret Access, UFOs on the Record.
Right.
These are, but you have to understand, the ET issue has probably had more documentaries done about it than any other issue in the world, right?
Same with fictional movies. I mean, it's one of the most popular themes of fictional movies.
The most lucrative genre in all of film and television, too. Over a period of time, not any given time, it can vary, but over since 1951, most lucrative genre. So you know what? Look, this is almost over, and for a great number of the world's people, it's going to be anticlimactic. It's going to be, oh, you mean ETs are here? Yeah, like I knew that 30 years ago. Or I knew it when I was 15 or whatever. It's going to be, which is what the governments want.
But it's a totally different thing. It's a totally different matter, Steve. To know something and even talk about it privately, than to have it confirmed by that Freudian father figure up in the White House or in
I agree,
Parliament.
but still, it's going to be more anticlimactic than if it had come out of the blue, which it hasn't. So that's where things are at, Ben. I'm glad to give you an update, and who knows? It's very possible that the next time you and I talk on radio, it will be in the post-disclosure world.
Well, I mean, if that happens, Steve, or when that happens, you'll be give you a call straight away, and we'll do a special show about it. It'll probably be
And I will be there for you, my friend, because you were there for me during the hard times.
Oh, thanks, mate. You're very welcome. I respect what you do, and I'm sure the listeners will agree when they look at your website. And just give the listeners a link so they can go and see what you're up to. And there's an awful lot on your website, I must say. It'll take them a while to get through it all.
Well, I've kind of shortened that. The ParadigmResearchGroup.org, which is a flash page.
Yeah,
it's got a link to support PRG's work. It has the central link, which is to the Rockefeller Initiative documents, which is at the core of all of this. It's the key to the whole to the door. At the bottom of the page is a link to the political coverage and the status page of the political initiative. And there's a lot of stuff there. And then to the lower right is a link into the PRG portal with a lot of other links to relevant stuff. It's a huge website, but I'm just trying to keep people focused now on the Rockefeller Initiative and the political initiative underway.
All right. So check that out, listeners, and check out some Steve's videos on YouTube. There's a lot of stuff of yours on YouTube. And check out the past shows. If you go to the show notes, you'll find my previous shows with Steve, which are quite a few now. So, Stephen Bassett, it's been great to talk to you again. Good luck with your endeavours, and keep us updated. Ben. Take care.
All right.
So that was Stephen Bassett. Thanks very much, Steve, for a really, really good interview. It was great to talk to you again. Hope to see you sometime while you're in England. So, Hillary, the Wicked Witch of the White House. Could she be our saviour? Well, as always, as I've explained before this situation many, many times, I don't need to reiterate that. You can check out my previous videos where I go into this in detail. But this whole subject represents a division within me, within my thoughts and feelings. It represents a wedge that has actually been driven through my own mind. And that is on the feasibility of willing disclosure altogether. And I can't deny the things Steve said. I mean, the fact that there's no doubt that the media, the way the media has covered, especially in the United States, but across the world, the way the media has covered the UFO issue and the statements made by various political figures is unprecedented. And I've got to ask myself, why is it happening? Of course, we live in a world where the media is controlled, but it's not controlled in the sense that there's a gun pointed at every single journalist's head. It's far more subtle than that. It's far more crafty and effective than that. But it doesn't always work in that case. And sometimes things, do, even within the mainstream media, things do emerge which are not intended by the control system. So, is this one of them? Are we looking at a true failure of the truth embargo after all these years, after nearly 70 years? Next year, of course, is Roswell 70, isn't it? It's the 70th anniversary of the Roswell incident. So just wait for my Hapanwo TV views, my Hapanwo TV programmes about that. Oh, so we'll have to see. The problem I have is I just don't like Hillary Clinton. I can't stand her. She gives me the creeps, just like her husband Bill, a former president. They're just these presidents. George W. Bush was a moron. Barack Obama is a smiling reader of scripts and auto cues, isn't he? But Bill Clinton was. He was an insincere, lying toad. There's no other word for it. And I know they're not all. No US president is going to be a nice guy. You don't get to be US president by being a good guy, be one of the goodies. But I mean, even by presidential standards, Clinton was horrible. He was absolutely horrible. And it looks like his wife is the same. I mean, she's already up to her neck in situations which, if anyone else was in these situations, they'd be arrested. These email scandals and things like that. The Benghazi scandal. So, the thing is, I do not like it. I mean, the reason I asked Steve that question about Trump and Sanders is, the thing is, I actually quite like those guys. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, I wouldn't vote for any of them. I'm opposed. Democracy is simply putting a cross on a piece of paper every 4 years to choose your government's public relations officer. It's the biggest confidence trick that's been played on the human race since religion. Yet, I do actually, as people, I much prefer Trump and Sanders. I mean, Donald Trump is this loudmouth, kind of very genial Scottish-American, blonde-haired, buffoon. I mean, he's a likeable buffoon. He's someone I could share a pint with down the pub, And Bernie Sanders is this kind of kind of Jewish grandfather. He's the kind of guy like I'd like to have as a headmaster at my school. If ever I got into a fight with my parents, or there was troubles between my mum and dad, if they were divorcing or something, I know I could knock on his door, go into the office and say, "Mr. Sanders," and I could cry like little boys do, and he'd probably come and put his arm around me and say, there, Ben, don't worry. And he'd be enormous comfort to me. He is the ideal school headmaster. But Hillary, she's just revolting. I mean, this funny thing is that, the things that she's now being accused of are nothing compared to what has been said about her by people like Cathy O'Brien, who accuses Hillary Clinton of sexually abusing her and her daughter. I mean, it's fun. I mean, I don't know if that's true, if maybe Cathy O'Brien was lying in that book, Transformation of America. If so, why doesn't Hillary sue her? That book's still in print now. She could shut it down overnight. This book makes the most horrific allegations of heinous crimes on some very, very rich and famous people. None of them have ever tried to sue Cathy O'Brien. It also seems that I've heard that Hillary is collaborating, well, there's accusations that Hillary is collaborating, this is unconfirmed, with several people who've complained about sexual impropriety of her husband. And we're not talking Monica Lewinsky here. We're talking about women who are accusing Bill Clinton, during his years in the White House, of rape, sexual assault and sexual harassment of a very, very extreme variety. And Hillary is trying, I think there are 17 of these women, and Hillary's trying to shut her up. So if there are any feminists out there, I mean, you know what I think of feminism, but if I just say, if there are any feminists out there, even if you disagree with me, all right, for goodness sake, don't support Hillary Clinton because she's a bird, all right? She's not on your side. She's not a women's rights activist. So I do not like Hillary Clinton. That's a problem, Steve. I don't. Maybe I should have said that. I mean, I didn't. You see, there are things I can say on the radio interviews, and then I go away and I think about it. I think I should have said more, and I'm sorry I didn't. If that's the case, if I wasn't, maybe I wasn't as challenging to Steve this time as I was last time. Maybe I should have been. So we'll see what happens anyway. Anyway, I'm thinking there'll be more details about this in a future film. I'm thinking of actually having an event on July the 8th. It'll be a street event, rather like the last one I did. I had to remove that film, unfortunately, for legal reasons, but they may be doing a street protest event for Disclosure Day, July the 8th. I'll let you know more about that when the time comes.
Right, I want to give you a bit of a heads up on what I've been doing and what I will be doing in the next coming months. Thanks to everyone who's attended the UFO Truth Southern Conference at Watford, which went down very well. This was UFO Truth magazine, and that really was great fun. Now, just to let you know, I will be speaking at an event called the Consciousness Tribal Gathering. Now, that's in North East Wales, near Llangollen. And that is it starts on Thursday the 28th of July and finishes on Monday the 1st of August. I'm not sure what day I'm speaking, but I will be there, I can assure you, and it should be fun. And just a couple of days before that, actually, on the 26th of July, I'm going to be speaking at the Swansea UFO Network. So that is really good. That went down very well last time. Bad weather last time. Hopefully it will be good weather this time. And we'll just pray for sunny weather, and I'll be discussing, I'm not sure, I'll probably talk about the same thing I did at UFO Truth, but there'll be some updates. It won't be exactly the same, so even if you got to UFO Truth, please get to that one. I'm also going to be at New Horizons St Anne's, and that's going to be on Monday, July the 11th, where I'm going to be talking about skeptics. That will not be boring, that'll be very interesting, so please do get to that if you can. And last but not least, of course, there is the upcoming launch of Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure, which is my new novel, which I've nearly finished. I'm now at the point now where it's got to be very intricate because I'm on the final act of the book. But I'm now at a point where I think I can safely bring it to a close. I know how it's going to go. Now, in doing this, I'm going to have to start looking at publishing options. I'm determined that this novel should be available as a good old-fashioned paper book, as well as the usual modern e-book format. And I can think of nothing more apt or auspicious than to launch the book on St. Theo's Day. The 1st of June, St. Theobald of Ruggiero, patron saint of hospital porters. That's his feast day. The thing is, it's looking increasingly likely I'm not going to reach that deadline. I'm not going to compromise on the quality and just rush the job. The finished article is going to be a good book, but it just would be such a wonderful gesture. So if I can do it, I will. If I can't, I won't. But it will be available. It'll be a good old-fashioned book, and it'll be as an e-book as well. So it will be a paperback too. I'm determined. I'm looking into that right now. There'll be more details coming soon. Now, the funny thing is, I've worked something out, and that is that Bryce Zabel is actually writing a book on the similar subject. I'll say more about that later. Bryce Zabel was a speaker at the 2011 Exopolitics UK conference, and he's the producer of the TV series Dark Skies. So we'll have to see how it goes with that. But I've had a word with him, and it looks like our two books are going to be different. We're not nicking each other's ideas, in other words. So I've managed to reassure him of that, and I'm pretty reassured of the same thing. So I'm curious to read his book. I really am. I don't believe I'm in competition with Bryce Zabel here. I don't see him as a competitor. I am pretty sure that we can both do a good job to write books which are different, and yet on the same theme. The more the merrier, that's what I say. I'm also, do remember I have another novel. It's called Evans Land. It's my first novel, and I'm selling a few copies of it, actually, if you're interested. So just email me. What it is because Roswell Rising is coming soon, some people have asked about my other novels. Now, Rockall is available for free online on the Ben's Bookcase blog. That's hpanwo-bb.blogspot.com. You can read that for free. It's a second edition. It's better than the original book, and you can just read it for nothing. But I have written a book before then called Evans Land. It came out in 2002 as a book, and according to the critic Estin Allen, it was very enjoyable and didn't drag. Quite an achievement, as it's over 900 pages. Now, I am the publisher of the book as well as the author. The book is for sale online. Prices vary a lot, but Amazon are charging £86.73, which is not my doing. Alright, because I sold it to wholesalers and they choose the price. But I have a number of copies in storage myself, and I'm putting those on the market for just £5 plus postage and packing. So it'll depend how much where you live. All you do have to do is email me at bennyj74@gmx.co.uk. The email address is on the blog at the bottom of the columns, all the columns. I'll keep you, and send me an address to send it to. I'll keep it strictly confidential. I'll tell you how much it costs. Pay me by using PayPal. There's a PayPal button on all my blogs at the bottom as well. And specified you're paying for goods and services, and it's not a donation when the system prompts you. Otherwise, PayPal take their cut. Now, bear in mind, I only have a dozen or so copies left. Stock's limited, so please do get in touch if you want a copy. Thank you. Now, something else happened which I think is very interesting, and which happened actually quite recently, in fact on the 3rd of May. But it is very, very telling about when these sort of things happen, and I didn't report on it straight away because I was busy, but I did a couple of days later. Loud explosions were heard in an area centred on Doncaster in North Yorkshire, but they were heard as far away as Leeds. Now, the government reported that these were sonic booms caused by high-speed aircraft, and the Royal Air Force announced that it had scrambled Typhoon jets from RAF Coningsby in Lincolnshire because of an, quote, unresponsive civilian aircraft, unquote, in the vicinity. And of course, in the post-9/11 world, this is always a big deal. Air France then issued a statement saying that it was one of their aircraft that had gone off course on a flight from Paris to Newcastle, and it was not answering radio messages. Now, the fighters located the aircraft, they re-established communications, and they escorted it until it landed safely at its destination. But Sorka Fal on whatdoesitmean.com published a very different story on the case. Now, alright, I'll come to that. And it says, very unequivocally, Northern England stunned after British fighter jets battle UFO. And she claims that a Russian report reveals that basically there was no missing French airliner. The fighter jets intercepted and fought with a UFO above the North Sea off the coast of Yorkshire. And the media in Britain was then issued with a defence advisory notice which forbade them from covering the story. But while Sorka Fal has said these things before, like Edward Snowden's about to reveal UFO disclosure, and she provides a source link, and it's it's just Glenn Greenwald's page at The Guardian, which Glenn Greenwald is Edward Snowden's collaborator in the mainstream media. And in this case, the hyperlink in the text just leads to the Russian Ministry of Defence's homepage. But there's a screenshot of a flightradar.com page that shows an RAF Airbus KC-2 tanker, which was deployed on the 3rd of May from RAF Bryce Norton in Oxfordshire at about 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. This was just when this was all happening. It's not far from me, that. This tanker headed towards the general area of the fighter operations and circled over Middlesbrough, and then headed out to sea, where it flew in a holding pattern for a while. But that's not unexpected, because nobody knew how long those fighters would have to stay airborne during this emergency, and they might need to be refueled in mid-air. The tanker was located just a short distance from the scene, but it might be because it needed to keep out the way in case any shooting started. But the presence of the tanker is not itself evidence that the official story is incorrect. What is strange is that such a breakdown occurred on a modern airliner, because you'd think that the navigation and systems and the communication systems would have double, triple redundancy built in to act as a backup if the main systems failed. Also, there are no news reports of interviews with the passengers. No reporter visiting the airport to talk to people coming off the plane. We've got no, well, I was flying back from a quiet weekend in Paris and I thought everything was normal, and then these fighter jets show up outside the windows. Interviews, nothing like that. Is it possible that the aerial activity over the north of England was indeed connected to a UFO? We don't know specifically, but it was something that the authorities do not want us to know about. They have put out a cover story. Now, ever since aircraft have been flying, there have been occasions when they've been sent up to investigate strange phenomena in the sky. And the earliest report was over Sweden in 1930, and there was all kinds of incidents in the Cold War, like Milton Torres in 1957. So it's perfectly possible this has happened again. And what's more, I mean, there's been some updates since then, because several people on Twitter and Facebook got in touch with me. Now, somebody contacted me. She's a lady who lives near Newcastle, and she's a quite prominent ufologist and has dedicated her life to ufology. She said, Ben, that the official story is true because I saw the Air France airliner under escort by the 2 RAF Typhoons landing at Newcastle Airport. Okay, but I know she's used to the sky. She knows what things look like in the sky, so I have to take her word seriously, but it's just, there's too many discrepancies. And then there's been a photo in the Boston Standard, Lincolnshire newspaper, that shows supposedly the aircraft going through the sound barrier, but it's a long exposure shot and a strong astronomical camera trying to capture the aurora borealis, and it looks like a bloody ladder, just 2 lines with some bits in between. The unidentified flying ladder. Also, the RAF Airbus KC-2 tanker has also returned to the same area from Bryce Norton, and indeed I think I heard it take off a few days ago, myself, when I was walking to work. This indicates there are continuing operations in that region. And somebody I know who lives near RAF Coningsby told me that they've heard a lot more activity there, takeoffs and landing of aircraft, since the 3rd of May. There continues to be no word at all from the passengers of the alleged airliner. It's not just the TV news interviews, but there's nothing on social media. There's nothing, hashtag Air France, missing Air France airliner, I was on it, I saw everything. No YouTube videos of people with their phone cameras filming outside their windows at this rather unusual experience of seeing these fighter jets escorting your airliner. It doesn't happen every day, does it? I think it's strange, though, isn't it? When you think that these airliners, they hold 100 or more people. There's been some more reports of people seeing UFOs. It's connected with the Baltic Sea anomaly. No, I don't think so. The Baltic Sea anomaly is an ancient monument, and these are Americans who can't tell the difference between the North Sea and the Baltic. Americans are notoriously bad at geography. Sorry, my American viewers. So we'll have to see what happens. Anyway, interesting case, and this is a breaking news. It's a new case that's just emerged recently.
So, exciting times, interesting times. What's going to happen next? That's the question. I think that Yorkshire case in particular, there's going to be a lot to report on that soon. Maybe there'll be some more details coming out, but I think there's no doubt something strange is happening there. It may not be ET related, but something very, very strange is happening there, definitely. So anyway, there's more to report, which is going to be on in the next instalment of this video series, UFO Disclosure 2016. And don't forget, Evans Land. This is my first novel, okay, and there's details of this on the Ben's Bookcase blog if you want to purchase a copy of this. Big thick book that is. That'll keep you quiet for a while. But do write to me, as I explained. I've got my email address and I will send you a copy of that. And stay tuned for Roswell Rising, or stay tuned. Look out for Roswell Rising in all good bookshops, coming very, very soon. And, well, as I said, I don't know if I can do it by June the 1st, but I'll do it as soon as possible afterwards. So, thank you very much for watching Hapanwo TV. This has been UFO Disclosure 2016 now. Hospital Port is pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order.